right now?
TB&J! TB&J! TB&J!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the TB&J podcast. Across from me is my co-host, Troy Brittingham.
And across from me is Jeff Ackerman.
And sitting in with us today, special guest and friend of the pod, John Fitzwater.
I should really learn how to play drums.
You really should.
That was like the
pretty
worst
terrible.
part of that whole song might be the drums.
You all know John Fitzwater is the composer of the intro to this podcast, and also his own podcast, Jager Bombs with Johnny's Mom. He's been on here before.
Yeah.
Longtime fans know him, all 6 of you.
And,
6.5. That guy, he's not doing well.
And some of them like him.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, what did we see this week, Troy?
I see you right now. I saw a lot of trick-or-treaters. I didn't see a lot of trick-or-treaters. It seemed pretty barren in my area.
Did it really?
We also saw Last Night in Soho.
We saw Last Night in Soho, the latest film from my favorite director, Edgar Wright. Wonderful man. I didn't mute my phone. We're just
That's
going to
hilarious
ignore that.
because you always
little...
go on about how we had to mute our phones. But
Yeah, that was a whole conversation before the podcast.
Yeah.
About how
It
we should mute
literally
our phones.
was, and I didn't do it because I'm bad at my job. Anywho, we saw Last Night in Soho from Edgar Wright, and holy shit, what a fucking film! It's not advertised as a horror movie, but it's certainly got some fucking horror
Isn't
elements.
it? I thought that's kind of what I went
No,
into it.
it's
thinking.
not. It's advertised as another thriller.
Yeah, like it comes off more as like a thriller mystery kind of style.
Okay,
because she's solving a murder, but I think it leans way heavier in the horror than I anticipated for sure.
But what is okay? So this is what I've wondered for years. Is thriller not kind of an extension of horror?
It's like
Pardon
it's sort of a subgenre of horror. Thriller leans
So
more towards...
I want to backtrack this before we get too off topic, or too out of school, I should say. So Edgar Wright does not consider it a horror film, but Google has it listed as horror/psychological horror. I didn't. It leaned into the horror, but I don't feel like it was enough to like take over the genre.
I think it was.
what the film
I think
is.
it came down to being a horror film overall, especially towards the end. There's a lot of horror elements. I just think it has a great blend of going from a thriller mystery to a straight up horror movie.
Right.
I think that's what makes it so interesting is because it isn't just a horror movie or just a thriller. It kind of really blends into both genres.
Okay.
I personally kind of don't think that genre matters at all in most things anymore.
Yeah,
But-
I think we've brushed against this conversation
Yeah.
topic before on the podcast, but you're very big on like there is no genre and there's no such thing as a kids movie.
There are genres. I'm hesitant to call things kids movies a lot unless it's like Minions. Like it's like it really has to be like Paw Patrol to be like. I mean, it's not. Well, no, there is a Paw Patrol movie.
They just
But,
came out
like,
with it.
There is a
actually.
Paw Patrol movie.
You need like it needs to be like something like that for me to be like this
Well,
is a kids movie.
There are like kids movies and there's like family movies. I think that's
Yeah.
the difference. But also like from my perspective, when you're talking about like genres, I'm a huge thing with music release for genres, and now I'm like even having a problem with like, is there a differentiation at this point? Like they're kind of slowly blending
Right.
to becoming one sort of sound.
Right, and you have so many artists that like they sound a certain way because they were influenced by other artists of different genres, and you can clearly tell from their style it's a blend of certain things. Everything's becoming a blend of everything else anymore.
Yeah,
so,
and then
as far as music's concerned, I should say.
And then you have like Marvel movies as an example, where everything's like an action movie and a superhero movie, obviously, because that's what that whole
I
franchise
think Marvel
is.
itself has become a genre at this point, hasn't it?
Kind of.
It's
But,
like a lighthearted action movie where
Yeah.
it's like got some comedy and it'll make you cry. But
even then, like Shanks. I keep saying
you keep trying to say
Shang Tsung is
but
what I want to say.
Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi is like is sort of more like a karate movie. You have like a heist movie in Ant-Man.
Yeah, they always
like,
try to like lean into like there's other genres within the Marvel movies,
Yeah.
and I think they kind of do that. I don't think they do it well though.
No, I wouldn't say
Some do it better than others.
Yeah.
Some definitely do it better than others. I would say like the romantic comedy subplot in Iron Man was kind of badly done, even though Iron Man's a really good movie. Whereas the heist in Ant-Man was done a little bit better, but I wouldn't say it was better.
I wouldn't say
Ant-Man,
it's a heist movie.
Ant-Man 2 is a better heist movie.
Ant-Man 2 is awful, but I'm not going to get into opinions about
Whoa.
that. But I
This
will
isn't
say,
about Ant-Man and the Wasp.
But my point is, though, I think as like a sort of fan of heist movies, I think it does a good job of trying to be one, but it just seems like it's trying to be one and not actually one.
I can understand that.
Because it still has so many of the like tropes of being a Marvel movie. Like it's almost like they have this formula they have to hit before they even pretend to be another genre.
Sure.
That's what I don't really like about it.
Yeah.
And to segue back in, Ant-Man, the first one, supposed to be directed by Edgar Wright.
Which would have been a much better movie, I think.
Yeah,
I like
absolutely.
both Ant-Man movies, and I agree with that.
Like, yeah. So, I mean, that goes down to, like, Thor Ragnarok being directed by...
Taika Waititi.
Yeah, like, that completely makes me... I think that movie separates itself from the MCU almost entirely because of the tone. And I think Edgar Wright directing Ant-Man would make you lean back into the more musical elements and, like, his creativity. I think it'd be a much better movie.
Yeah, absolutely. But I want to give a couple special shout-outs at the top of this as well to the cinematographer of this movie, because every single shot was perfectly done.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a scene where so it's about, if you guys don't know what Last Night in Soho is about, why are you listening to this podcast? But that this young girl who's going to the College of Fashion in London, and she can see ghosts, basically.
She's a medium.
It seems to be. They didn't outright call it ghosts, but it's pretty much ghosts. She sees things that have happened, and then like she sees the ghost of her deceased mother sometimes whenever there's like something good happening in her life, and that was kind of cool. But she rents a room in London, and she sees the ghost of this woman who lived in the 1960s. This woman who wants to be an entertainer and ends up with this guy who pimps her out and does all sorts of things. And it does lean very heavily into the horror aspects from that point forward. But there's a scene where she first goes into the 60s, and it flashes between Sandy, the other woman played by Anya Taylor-Joy, and then Ellie, who is played by, I've got it right in front of me, let me just find it, Thomasin McKenzie. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But both these actresses did an amazing fucking job. And it like switches between the two of them through this like swinging dance scene in this club in Paris. I'm sorry, the Café de Paris in London. And it's an absolutely beautifully shot scene. It was wonderful.
What's the name of Thomasin Mackenzie's name?
Thomasin McKenzie, she was Ellie Turner,
Ellie,
the main character.
She's like the real lead, obviously, because Sandy's in like half
Anya
of it.
Taylor-Joy is the other half of the lead, I guess.
Yeah, I do know her, but she is. It's not really like a 50-50. It's as much as it's like a sort of 70% her, and she's incredible in this.
I know. I have not seen her before, but apparently she's been in a couple things. She was in Jojo Rabbit. She was in the 2018 film Leave No Trace.
I haven't seen Jojo Rabbit. I'm so sad about that.
Me too. I wanted to see it with you, but then lockdown happened.
I would say like to go back onto your point though is like Anya
Taylor-Joy. She plays Sandy.
Yeah, she has kind of build herself to be something relatively big right now.
Yeah.
And you have her as like the sort of like captured like the non like Edgar Wright fans, but then you throw in this lead that no one knows and have her like not outperform but do a fantastic job the way she does. I think that goes to a point that I kind of made with Jeff that it quotes sort of semi-quotes Bo Burnham, but the idea of having an actor you've never heard of before just trying to create the character itself, and it's not just like, oh, it's this person playing, it's not Matt Damon playing a superstar. It's like this person I've never heard of is now this character, and that's how I know them, and it makes you sort of live in the environment and like enjoy the movie more because you're not familiar with the faces. So it becomes it creates a story I think around itself.
That's a problem we have a lot in nowadays cinema, where it's like big names keep getting cast in different roles. Like take fucking Free Guy for example, which we covered on this show. Like Ryan Reynolds.
That's a Ryan Reynolds vehicle. Yeah.
It's a Ryan Reynolds vehicle. I kept looking at Guy, but it was just Ryan Reynolds. And whenever I see him as anything except Deadpool, where he's wearing a mask, I just think that's Ryan Reynolds. And that happens with Ben Affleck.
To be fair, that's sort of always been a thing where like you have the up and comer kind of movies, and then you have like John Wayne in a Western movie, and a lot of the Western movies he was in were the same except for like the big standout ones.
Sure.
Yeah, like Vince Vaughn played Vince Vaughn in every movie he's ever been in.
Yeah, I feel like it happens more often nowadays. That might just be because I know more actors now or something.
I think the biggest thing right now is that there's like the main top at whatever it is, and that you have now like the MCU, you have like these big casting movies with like a million different these faces that you're all familiar with. So that sort of doesn't help. Yeah. And then you have someone like Ryan Reynolds who's done like fucking 1,700 movies in the last like 3 months.
Yeah, that's true.
And remember, like some of those people, like Chris Hemsworth was nobody coming into Thor.
Yeah, and then he became Chris Hemsworth. Like
yeah. Yeah.
Have you ever seen the auditions where Tom Hiddleston auditioned for Thor?
No.
Tom Hiddleston auditioned for Thor first and got Loki.
That's really funny.
And it's really, really weird seeing him like try like pretend to like toss the hammer. You need look if you're listening at home, look it up. Look up Tom Hiddleston Thor review.
That sounds
it's
absolutely
bizarre.
awesome.
That does. I have to check that, especially because of like his whole like demeanor as a person is completely almost opposite the Chris Hemsworth character. The other thing I wanted to make was it was Chris Pratt. He was Andy Dwyer.
Dwyer, I think.
In Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
And like he was a lovable goofball, and that was it. But then he became what was it? Star-Lord, and after that he's in everything.
Jurassic World.
He's literally like he's in
Lego Movie.
Yeah, he became like this huge superstar, and it's crazy. But like he also didn't become like Andy Dwyer. Like he became Chris Pratt, and Chris Pratt now is just
And now he's Mario and Garfield.
exactly like this is it's sort of problematic, but
I do want to point out, so Stephen Price is the composer for this movie, and Edgar Wright, if you are not familiar with him as a director, music is very, very important to him, and the movie he did, I believe it was 2016, Baby Driver, first of all, one of my very favorite movies of all time. Second of all, that whole movie was built around the soundtrack, and it's a passion project idea he's had ever since he was young and like a student. He always wanted to make this movie, and the way he describes it, I believe he said it in his Ask Reddit AMA the other day, where he had an idea when he was a film student of he heard the song Bell Bottoms, and he had this idea in his head of a heist scene to that song, and that became the opening scene of Baby Driver, and the whole movie got built around that soundtrack, and it became an amazing fucking movie. And then Stephen Price just making all the background music that wasn't licensed, I should say, in this movie was out fucking standing. Everything was very well done, and he has a fucking award. He did the soundtrack for Gravity as well as the first Suicide Squad. We're not going to talk about it. He also did the Baby Driver. He did all the background music that wasn't licensed in that movie as well, just to give him a little bit more of a blowjob because he fucking deserves it. And then the other shout out is Chung Chung-hoon, who was the cinematographer, who you might know, John, because he was the cinematographer on Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, which I've heard you say that movie's name before.
really,
I thought I had.
no, I'm intrigued.
You
Could've
seem
made
very
that up.
confused.
Yeah.
The other one that I know, he did Hotel Artemis that we were just talking about the other day, and he's also done Zombieland Double Tap.
Okay.
Which, whatever you think
I
about
like
the
how-
writing of that movie, it was shot very well.
So hold on, because the two of them, they did rewrite Zombieland, but that's not the point. As a fan of them two, I like how you picked out a random movie I didn't know, but not Zombieland, the one I'm like obsessed with.
I really thought you knew Me and Earl and the Dying Girl.
All right, see, I'm looking it up as we're talking.
It's a comedy drama, and it came out in 2015. I believe we were talking about it when it came out. I just can't remember when exactly it happened, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm going to look into that.
Nick Offerman and John Bernthal are in it. We should watch just for them.
100%.
Anyway,
And the sweet ass name.
yeah, but I just want to give a shout out to those two guys because they were, aside from Edgar Wright directing, they did a very good job making this movie just look and sound beautiful.
Did he only
There's
do?
also some really hard shots to do in this.
Absolutely.
Of like everything with the mirrors.
Everything with the mirrors when she's walking through the Café de Paris. And then there's all these scenes when Ellie is dreaming and she's seeing Sandy's life. It's constantly like we see Sandy doing the scene, but then there's usually like a mirror somewhere in the vicinity and we see Ellie on the other side.
Or even like the dance scene we were talking about earlier, where she physically is in the dance scene. It's just a combination of just going behind him and you see the person change during a spin or something. It's crazy.
Exactly. Like these, and like Matt Smith, who does the foil to Sandy, he does like her boyfriend Jack. Like the complete fluidness of all of his motions and how it seamlessly switches between Ellie and Sandy. It's just wonderfully, wonderfully shot, and I'm sure that must have taken forever to fucking do.
What is it about Matt Smith? Matt Smith has sort of that Benedict Cumberbatch effect to him, where you like look at him and you go, "Are you ugly or really hot?"
The answer is really hot.
I don't know what you're talking about. He's just hot.
No, I can see it though because
He's
he has
got like a weird face, like a weird head structure.
It's a unique sort of face. It's not like it's part of what makes it like it's so interesting. It's kind of hot, or it's like it's so interesting. It's
he
like
was
I'm
shoved
out.
in a phone box for a number of
I
years.
feel
That'll
like
do it.
he leans a little bit closer to like
Time traveling really bad on the.
I feel like he sort of falls kind of closer to the middle. I feel like Benedict Cumberbatch kind of leans a little bit more of like being like a traditional looking attractive dude almost. And then I feel like on the opposite end is like Adam Driver's like almost like a normal looking guy. Like there are people who think he's attractive.
He's kind of doofy looking.
He's
though.
very doofy looking, but that's
He's
also part
he's
of
a little
it.
doofy.
Like it's
Yeah, but that's again, and maybe and that's just the thing. Like I guess obviously attractiveness is to the beholder or whatever the fuck it is, but still, like he's like a doofy looking dude. But then people are like, I want to fuck Adam Driver so bad. Most
You
people,
big
mostly-
redwood giant.
mostly
John Oliver.
John Oliver, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Chung Jung-hoon also was the cinematographer for It.
Well, no, so that makes sense because that fucking movie, every aspect of it is like well done, basically just cinematography. But did he do Zombieland 1? Because Zombieland 1, one of the catching things for me was the cinematography.
Doesn't look like it.
Whoever did that was good too. But I mean, Zombieland 2 was just basically a
He's done
re-copy.
another. He's a South Korean cinematographer. A lot of his work is Korean, but he did a movie in 2006 called "I'm a Cyborg, but That's Okay," and it's a South Korean romantic comedy. And I kind of want to watch.
Oh my
it
god,
now.
is the cyborg falling in love? But he can't.
It very well might be.
I hope
I
so.
kind of want to see it. Anyway, that's not the point.
This horror movie.
Yeah. So basically, she sees the ghost of Sandy living out her life, and at first she's like super enthralled in it, right? We see Ellie, and Ellie immediately does not like fashion college at all. She gets to her dorm room, and her roommate's kind of a bitch.
So I do have a comment on that. She's a little too much of it. It's like you're in college, not high school. That was like what bothered me there.
College, yes, but it's also fashion college.
I guess,
I
but
imagine it's like a different level of just snottiness and.
If there's one thing, like one gripe I have with the movie, and I don't have money, but that was one of them, was just like, you're too much of an obvious bad guy. Like, you're,
I mean, it's also like you're in college now, but like you're fresh out of high school, I assume.
yeah, but even still, I mean, like, you're immature and stupid, but just the catting it, I don't know, something about, like, it reminded me of, like, a shitty, like, TV high school show, like, how evil she was, but, like,
I think
Girls
they
were also pretty mean to each other.
I think they were kind of going for like. I think she was kind of the comedic part of it a little bit.
like
but
she's supposed to be over the top.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
because she's not in a whole lot of it, and she doesn't really do anything super important other than drive her out of the.
It seems like almost like her design character was to, I guess, get you to that moment with later on, I guess, with the scissors.
Yeah.
Like that kind of moment where you're like, oh fuck, you should have done it like that. So I guess that's kind of cool.
But yeah, so Ellie's not really enjoying fashion college, and she lives with her grandmother after her mother passed away. She kind of, funny enough, gets put on the spot at college. Like, oh, what happened to your mom? And she's like, she killed herself when I was 7. Yeah. So anyway, like clearly does not want to talk about it, and they kind of force it out of her. And then her roommate Jocasta like forces more information out of her, and then she keeps one-upping her, which I thought was just hilarious.
Oh yeah, like my uncle. Yeah, my uncle killed
she's
himself
like,
too.
my uncle killed himself, so like I totally know what you're going through. And I'm just like, no, bitch, no, you don't. Shut the fuck up. And then like she's trying to sleep like the first night, and the roommate comes blasting in with a man just like fucking on the bed. So she just like awkwardly leaves wrapped in a blanket to go sit outside, but there's a party going on, so she's just like in a corner trying to be left alone. It's kind of like really sad. It kind of like breaks your heart a little bit for this girl. But she's clearly not having a good time. She ends up renting a room off campus by this sweet old woman played by Diana Rigg, the legendary Diana Rigg.
Is this her last?
This is her last
performance?
cinematic performance before she
died, I think, was like a month.
tragically passed in September 2020. She passed shortly after filming Wrapped for Last Night in Soho, and it's tragic, really fucking tragic. She was Lady Elena Tyrell from Game of Thrones. She was Mrs. James Bond on Her Majesty's Secret Service. She was fucking incredible throughout her entire life. She was,
and she's good in this.
and she's really fucking good as Miss Collins in this too. It's absolutely incredible. But she's like this bitter old. She's like this mean like spinster lady. It looks like, who just lives in this giant house.
They do a good job of like she's kind of like mean, and grumpy, but also like kind of
not
like
unfair.
Yeah, she's fair and kind of fun sometimes, but not usually.
Yeah.
Like she's like gone through some shit, but at the same time she's still a human being. Like you're all
Right.
right. I'm
Yeah.
gonna keep around with you.
You're pretty okay. And she lets Ellie rent like the upstairs room, and she has this whole room to herself now, and there's a neon glowing light from the French bistro next door that's constantly coming through the window. It's like flashing red and blue, and it adds this like element of what's the word I'm looking for?
I think it adds a tempo to the entire room, a literal tempo.
It adds a literal tempo, and she drops the needle on a record as she's getting set up in her room, and it goes with the music, which, if you know Edgar Wright, you saw that coming a mile away, because that's what he's about, is the fucking music matching up with the cinematography.
The music didn't surprise me at all because it's an Edgar Wright thing. The lighting in this really surprises me because everything, when they go back to the 60s, sort of has that sort of neon to it.
Mm-hmm.
And
this movie is quite neon,
right?
And then the posters to it are very neon as well. I believe Soho is usually stylized in neon pink on all the posters.
But also, like, anytime there's anything bad that's about to happen, the light stops flashing white and green, and it just does red over and over and over again.
Yeah,
and there's certain
the imagery
scenes,
is amazing, and again. Chung Chung-hoon, the fucking cinematographer, it's fucking nails it every time.
And there's a couple scenes where she's still in the 60s, and there's like a red flashing light just from seemingly nowhere because it's
the two different realities blend sometimes, and it's really, really fun. It's such a great. Fun might not be the right word when describing this movie.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, that's the other thing, is the subtext of the movie is not even subtext. It just kind of comes out and says it at you. But like the whole point of the movie is it's sort of commentating on how, especially in the 60s, we basically commodify female bodies, and still kind of do now. And
right, they keep drawing these parallels between the way Sandy is treated in the 60s and the way that Ellie is treated and looked at in the modern day.
Yeah,
and how it's very, very similar, even though we've come so far and believe, in massive quotes, that we treat women better. We kind of sort of don't.
It basically starts off with her getting the taxi to the fashion school. And the guy's like trying to make small talk, and he's like, you got the legs to be a model, and you might have your first stalker. And it's
and she's the tone shifts very suddenly and dramatically to like she's very scared for like her well-being.
That's a great example and a good way to just understand the concepts of like a really piece of shit male concept of like, oh, I'm making a joke, but you're really just being like the most creepiest motherfucker in the world. It's like that's not funny to anybody,
because this guy's like
yourself.
Clearly like 40s, 50s, like an older British guy driving a taxi cab. Like he's not. To Ellie, who's probably like what 19, 20, she's probably like scared out of her fucking mind.
Yeah, they do a really good concept, just basically a fish out of water. But like you going from the tone of the countryside to the second she gets into London, and this is the first encounter she has.
Yeah, they do have that culture shock because Ellie, growing up with her grandmother as her primary caretaker, she has like an older sense of like fashion and music of what she's into, which gets played up very hard in this movie, and it's amazing. She has a line where she says if she could live anywhere, anytime, she'd want to live in London in the 60s, where all like the swinging dancing was happening and all the carelessness and all the great music and fashion, and she constantly keeps playing 60s music. Yeah, and then she shows up at her dorm room, and her roommate's like, oh, what are you wearing? And she was like, oh, I made it myself. And it's like this very old-fashioned looking dress, but it's very well made. And her roommate just like turns her nose up at it, and she's like, I have this fancy designer from before she sold out, LOL. And I'm like, what the fuck's going on here?
Like it goes from like I'm this like two different realms of a hipster, to be honest. Like I had the coolest thing before it was cool, and I have something I made myself. Like that's the two opposites.
Exactly.
But Edgar Wright is quoted as saying like the main like mentality he wants with this movie is that like everyone who claims they were born in the wrong decade, just understand like this is not what you really want. Like you got to understand like where you came from and where you want to go.
That was definitely the undertones of all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the 60s were fucking dramatic, but you're romanticizing the concept of the 60s. But at the same time, simultaneously, it's like, yeah, they're great, but even though we haven't come along enough, we've come a fucking far away from, serial killer murders getting away pretty easily.
Yeah. And from like literally pimping out women that just want a career in show business.
I mean, they still do that, but
Harvey Weinstein.
I mean, yeah, like the concepts that like the Me Too movement exists is still a million times better than what it could be, and it still has a million times more ways to go.
Yeah, of course, there's always progress that can be made, and we are three white dudes that don't really have any authority to speak on that subject at all.
No. I'm pretty sure
white guys.
Right now, this is the podcast. You're listening to it right now. We're going to do it. We're going to end sexism right here in a tight hour-long podcast. Three white dudes. You've been waiting for us, the saviors.
Guys, to be fair, we were going to try racism, but we're like,
we don't want to turn the world on its ear too hard. Let's start small. Let's start with sexism.
Yeah, it's a small talk.
Racism next week.
Just a small.
We got to set a goal for ourselves for the future. We got to make sure we keep going up.
We'll just watch the Lincoln biopic, and that's
Oh,
how
yeah.
we'll solve racism.
Oh, yeah. That's how that happens. Sure. Absolutely. Where the fuck were we, Troy?
I don't know. We should get away from this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Digging out of a hole.
Digging out of the hole. Boop, boop, boop.
We were talking about the 60s and how it was
We were talking about
romanticized.
the 60s, yes. I was going to make a point. So you were talking about how we romanticize the 60s, and I think there is definitely a point to that, because if you put enough time between the decade something happens and then the people thinking back to it, all you remember is the good.
Yeah.
Like, everyone loves to romanticize 80s rock, and that's great. But I've spoken to my parents that lived through it. There was an awful lot of shit to sift through to find the good Billy Joel, the Bruce Springsteen, the other stuff that didn't come out of Jersey.
That's what I always say about movies, where people are always like, movies used to be better back then, and then you like go back and you're like, there's some garbage
There's
back in the
a lot of garbage in like
look at
the
the
70s,
90s,
80s, 90s.
Look at the 90s in general.
Yeah.
Most of it.
And like even people today that are like, "Oh, Bond, we got to go see the new one. It's amazing. It's a great series that's held up." And I'm just like, "Are you sure about that?"
Bond?
In one of the older
there's
Bonds,
a lot of people.
Sean Connery raped a woman straight. I'm
That's-
pretty
yeah,
sure
that
that
did
wouldn't
happen.
fly these days.
Yeah, that did happen.
Yeah, that happened.
Speaking of sexism again,
I was going to say it.
but the and a little homophobia.
They like
a
to
lot
say
of
that she was gay before Bond.
Cool,
Jesus Christ.
cool. Anyway,
It's literally how they say it.
but but like there's a lot of people that I know. There's a lot of people that I know who say that, like, yeah, I like Bond, but you know, like Craig Bond is like it's not good. Like, it's not the old Bond.
No,
And-
it's better.
there's some bad Bonds.
Like the new Transformers, they're clearly better than the old Transformers, right, Troy?
Are we talking about Michael Bay?
Yeah,
or?
yeah. Shia LaBeouf and that guy that voiced Optimus Prime, whose name I can't remember.
Well, to be clear, I do not.
I
no
was kidding, by the way.
Transformers.
I can hear D, who's not with us today, just like screaming because
Yeah,
I know
no,
he
I
hates the new Transformers.
No, I know where you're going with it. I
think
just
it's
also
universally hated, to be honest.
Yeah, it's pretty universally shit upon.
But no, we live in a realm of this. Well, we're as a fucking culture living in a realm of nostalgia. Like, the American dream is literally like, but remember before? Like, that's the entire epitome of our fucking lives anymore.
Half of our government is just based around preying on that feeling of like, don't you want things to go back to the way they were? Like that, human beings love nostalgia. They love living in the past. And Edgar Wright wanted to poke a little bit of fun at that.
So I
with this
should
movie.
stop watching Tucker Carlson, is what you're saying.
Did you know Tucker Carlson and Fox News are banned from being aired in the UK?
No,
Yeah, it's a real thing.
I mean, I get.
I was
that's,
listening
I have no
to-
problem with that, but
I was listening to a British guy talk about it, and he was like, I have no idea why anybody listens to this guy. The UK doesn't let him on the air.
yeah, he sucks.
Anyway, that's not the point.
It's a very political
But
episode.
this movie takes a little gander at, like, everyone romanticizes decades based on, like, what they're known for and what's survived well into the future. But the reality is a lot darker and a lot crappier than most people realize. And we are living in the best time. You do not want to go back to the past because it sucks. Believe me, it sucks.
Yeah, like, for all the things that like are going wrong right now, there are problems that were at least there's some steps forward that are being made for the first time.
Like, she's
in
saying how
years.
she loves the 60s and wants to live there as she has her wireless Beats headphones around her neck. And I'm just like, though, you wouldn't have those if you were in the 60s. And I bet you fucking love your
I can
wireless
talk
Beats,
to my
don't you?
goddamn home and make shit
What
turn
do you
on.
think-
It's fucking awesome.
What do you
Yeah.
think the nostalgia of 2021 is going to be?
People
being able to
looking back
breathe?
on nowadays and being nostalgic probably for AIs that don't listen in on your private conversations. Nostalgic for things that aren't Terminator or Umbrella Corps.
Yeah, well,
If you want to go real dystopian with it.
I mean, to be fair, Disney owns a lot of things. They basically are an umbrella corporation.
Dude,
Do.
all they need is a T-virus.
All I need is some sort of pharmacy. If the second they open a pharmacy, I'm out.
Were there any more viruses than the T?
The T, yeah, there's a T virus, the G virus. There's the I was gonna say G univirus. No, there's the T virus is like the main one. The G virus is like the eyeball one. There's other ones. I mean, there's
I'm
also
talking about
Las
Resident Evil,
Plagas.
by the way. Sorry for the
Yeah,
tangent.
Las Plagas, which is a whole different thing, which is a root from another thing that they talk about in Resident Evil 5, which is what makes the Las Plagas.
And then the mold, right? That's new.
And then the mold's the newest one.
Thank you, Troy.
You literally blew out my eardrums. It was awesome.
Yeah, I'll adjust that in post because that was awfully loud at first. Anyway, back to Last Night in Soho. So she sees Sandy's life,
And
and
she has the G virus. No, I gotta continue.
and she starts turning her life around in the modern day. She dyes her hair to look like Sandy's. She starts doing it Sandy's way. And as a fashion project, she designs like a dress that Sandy was wearing, which I'm pretty sure that's plagiarism in the fashion world, but
No,
whatever.
No.
Yeah, it's not like Sandy made that dress herself. Like that she was bought somewhere.
Yeah,
Like,
she definitely bought that dress somewhere, and
it's
now
like, it's very it's very 60s style. Yeah, because it fucking existed in the 60s.
it was 60s. How do you not notice? Anyway, doesn't matter. And she ends up getting a job at a bar, and she meets this older gentleman who frequents the bar, and he's kind of creepy and not very forthcoming with a lot of information as to who he is, other than that he used to be a ladies' man and he knows a lot of the girls in this town. And that right there is pretty fucking creepy. I'm just going to say it out loud. That's not how you introduce yourself to a young girl working the bar. Just going to say it.
You didn't. So, the first time she sees him though is he's coming out of a like a peep show section. I guess it's like a strip club. I don't know why I
A
said
red
peep
light
show.
building. I
Yeah,
think. I think it was like a massage parlor or something.
Yeah, something where diddies are getting touched and whatever. But the point is, you see that's the first time they make eye contact is where like he's coming out and he makes eye contact with her and he kind of just like smiles and like brushes himself off and walks off. And that's like where their relationship starts.
Yeah, and it's kind of a knowing smile because at this point we've already met Jack and Sandy, and we're led to believe that's Jack, and we're led to believe that he is grown-up Matt Smith, which, I mean, maybe he could be. Who knows?
The other thing
We know we saw the movie.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, we
No
actually
spoilers
all
here.
watched the movie.
Damn it.
I was there
Right.
with you, man. The other thing I would say that this is sort of an off-topic thing, we talk about like nostalgia and romanticizing things, is like her working at the bar. Like, I love like the concepts of a nice bar, like a dive bar that like it's just chill and the regulars, but there's also sort of like Irish vibe to it. This is sort of a very me thing, but it's so funny because like just that alone, because like the bar would not be like that all the time. It probably fucking sucks to work there, but they kind of make it seem like it's an easygoing, like you give a couple pints, you talk to your friends, and then you bounce kind of
Well,
place.
also like to what you were saying before about like different characters have different nostalgias for things. The one lady who owns the bar, she like has a whole nostalgic thing about like all the memories soaked into the walls of this place.
Yeah.
And it's like right after Ellie's like I've just had a
that
bad
was
time.
one of my favorite lines in the whole movie because Ellie turns to her and was like, "Do you believe in spirits?" And she kind of looks at her like, "Are you fucking kidding me? We work at a bar."
It was, oh my god, it's one of my favorite fucking jokes that whole movie because I was like, that's great.
It was a little bit of lightheartedness in the middle of this. Like Ellie's going through a little bit of hell, like seeing Sandy every fucking night.
It's an Edgar Wright movie, so it's got a pretty appropriate amount of levity. Like it's weird because it kind of all of Edgar
Do you
Wright's
remember the
stuff-
faceless men that were attacking her in the streets?
But here's the thing, like it also kind of throws in jokes, and in any other movie probably would be maybe too many jokes in a thing that also has the faceless men in the streets.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
You
But
haven't
Edgar
seen New
Wright's-
Mutants. Sorry, continue.
No, I haven't seen New Mutants. I'm very upset about it.
So I actually saw that in theaters. We'll get back to that.
Yeah, Anya Taylor-Joy is in New Mutants, right?
And there's also faceless people in it. That's why. And it's also haunts Anya Taylor. Like it's her haunting dreams is
That is
faceless people. Sorry, I got excited.
No, you're fine. So basically, in when Ellie is awake and not dreaming and seeing Sandy, she uses the '60s lifestyle that she keeps seeing to kind of influence her modern life, and she changes her hair, she gets new clothes that were very expensive, and she does all these things, and her life starts turning around. She's very happy.
It kind of gives her a bit of a confidence boost. Yeah.
It does, yeah. Until she sees Sandy getting mistreated by Jack. She sees Sandy getting like real shitty like peep show gigs instead of like singing the way she wanted to. She is like treated like crap by Jack, and it gets to the point where Jack asks her to sleep with other men for money, and Sandy says absolutely not and kind of like runs away, and Ellie keeps trying to like comfort her in the dream. She keeps trying to like hug her and touch her and fight her enemies and say like get away from her kind of a thing. It becomes a very protective relationship of this woman who lived 50 years ago. Like she's clearly not that nothing you can do is going to affect it, but Ellie doesn't see it that way.
60.
Yes. And then eventually Ellie starts seeing these ghosts that are like the ghosts of the men that Sandy had slept with. And it's like these faceless men just like constantly all around her, like like on the streets, at school, everywhere, and she feels like she's getting attacked by these guys. She cannot escape it at all, and there comes a scene where she's in the library trying to find information. She's backtrack a little bit.
So real quick before we do that,
Please.
there's one of the things I did like is the transitioning of her becoming like. So they do. I think the build of her becoming basically a prostitute. Well, a prostitute that just becomes a prostitute. Is how they do it. They go from she meets Jack and they hit it off, and you're expecting this to be a beautiful relationship, and then next thing you know, she's like getting an audition for this gig, and you see Anya Taylor-Joy actually sings it herself too, and she has a fucking beautiful voice, and she sings Downtown, a great cover. And as she does that, like she impresses the owner of the bar, and she thinks, "Oh, cool! I'm going to come back here and do this awesome sing piece." And you cut back to her first time performing there, and you find out it's like basically like a burlesque show. And she's basically, she's like half naked and dancing as a background dancer to this
as a wind-up toy.
Yeah, as a wind-up toy to this other like skimpy dressed dancer. And they just slowly build it from there, where like she wants to be a performer, and Matt Smith's character, Jack, he is constantly making it seem like this is how you have to do it. And that's kind of what it's more or less the truth there, is that you have to go through the bottom dweller to become a top star. And the whole concept that I liked about this the most is that in the beginning, Sandy's character was so confident that I keep pulling this was so confident that she went to the Paris place in London,
Café de Paris,
and just was like, I'm going to perform here. Like, it's going to happen. And, like, you see her break from there and have to slowly become a prostitute.
Yeah, it's really fucking... This is what the movie changes from, like, whatever we thought it was into this, like, really dark horror film. And it absolutely just... It changes gradually until it changes suddenly. Like, there's hints of it. Like, the music will tense up. There'll be, like, some dramatic violins, and then they'll stop. And you're like, oh... What's going on here? And then all of a sudden it turns into a massive fucking horror movie, and it's amazing. It's
about when like you see the ghosts come into the when she goes from it's just a dream she has to where she literally doesn't want to go to sleep, and I think it's they use the point of that movie is when she breaks the mirror, and that's when the ghost started becoming like she broke the barrier between the dreams and real life, and that's when you see the real life events happen.
Right. And then, so she also meets a man at school named John, who's a very nice boy, who's like trying to be very super supportive to her.
Joe, all right, full stop. John's so fucking cute in this movie.
Yeah,
he's adorable.
I fucking love John. Not you.
I'm
not your co-host, John.
But
what? Twirl the microphone cable in your finger.
I also like that they don't do the thing of like, oh, they're two nervous people, will they get together? And then like it's the last scene of the movie. But no, like,
they clearly get together.
Yeah, it's just they're just like two fucking dorks who just like each other.
Yep.
And his whole point of the movie is basically just being the one dude without toxic masculinity. But
yeah,
that's all I have. I just need to.
So I have a love-hate relationship with that concept because it sort of also seems like it's kind of a forced love interest that you didn't really need.
Really?
You didn't. It wasn't necessary, but I didn't mind it. It didn't feel out of place.
Yeah, like it seemed like I guess the atmosphere of the movie, you have so many toxic men that you do need that. Like you got to give some like hope. Like some
you can't just have a movie about like men being terrible.
Yeah.
Oh wait, maybe you can.
Yeah, they mostly are, but
it's more of a like, hey. Don't be like this.
Yeah.
Be like this.
Yeah, and it's so the positivity of it is that like, hey, there is at least that one guy. But again, then it's sort of there's a scene like later on when they like they get drunk or whatever and hook up. And like all of that kind of creates attention. So there's points of the movie that I enjoy with him. I just felt like at first when he first showed up, I was like, oh, there's a love interest. Like I didn't. It just seemed like it was too cliche, but it does dwell into something a little bit better.
Yeah, it does, and there's a lot of. There's a lot of shit going on in this movie. Anyway, so John invites her out to a Halloween party, and she says yes, absolutely, because she needs something to get her mind off of Sandy and what's going on.
And she doesn't want to go to sleep.
And she doesn't want to go to sleep. And then they're at the party, and that's where she starts seeing the faceless men in real life. She starts seeing them like all over the party. She gets really scared. She ends up running out of the party into the rain outside. John follows her, and he's trying to comfort her and say what's wrong, and she doesn't quite explain it yet, but like they end up kissing. They go back to her place, and they are in the process of hooking up when she starts seeing Sandy's murder. Like she starts, the line is completely gone between like the dream world and the real world, between the visions in the 60s and the modern day, which is like 2020-ish, I guess.
So
she's got wireless Beats and a smartphone. So
yeah, it's they don't really tell you what time of a day, like decade it is.
It's
it does
clearly
keep it
today.
Yeah. But we should also mention something we did was that there's no men allowed in the
in
Miss
Ms. Collins, one of the stipulations for her renting a room from Miss Collins was no boys after 8. And at first Ellie was like, yeah, not a problem. And now she's inviting John over, and she's like, we just gotta be quiet. And they go upstairs real quiet, and then she starts seeing the murder. She's screaming, freaking out. John's trying to figure out what the fuck is going on because he was about to, get his dick wet, and now he's not.
Some coitus.
The girl's just yelling at him. And then, of course, Miss Collins comes up the stairs, and she's like, is there a boy in there? And, of course, there is a boy in there. She nearly fucking kills him, chasing him out of the apartment. And she just wants to make sure Ellie's okay. She's like, we'll talk about this in the morning. And Ellie tells Miss Collins, like, was there a woman murdered upstairs? Miss Collins is like, there's been a lot of women in this apartment. Nobody was murdered. No woman was murdered upstairs. You're fucking crazy. Everything's fine. She ends up seeing these men over and over and over until she eventually flees school and runs to the police to report the murder. And the police think she's fucking nuts. They absolutely think she's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, when you're reporting murder from 60 years prior, it's not going to...
Yeah, with no hard evidence and not even a last name for the victim or the
your
attacker.
Whole claim is that I've seen it happen, I had a vision. It's
right. She saw Sandy get murdered by Jack, but she has nothing else to go by. Like, she doesn't know Sandy's last name, she doesn't know Jack's last name, she knows none of these pieces of the puzzle, so the cops just kind of, like, shrug and she leaves. And then she tries to figure out the murder on her own. So she goes to the library. She's looking through missing persons records. John shows up to help her because he's fully on board at this point. He says, my aunt believes in some weird shit, so, like, sure, maybe you're telling the truth.
So that's another thing is, yeah, it's kind of a convoluted reason to just be like, okay, and he trusts her. But I'm a big fan of people showing up to people in crisis in movies like this and just being like, I believe you. Because there's so many movies that the whole, like...
The whole world says I don't believe you.
Yeah, the whole conflict of it is they're like...
The movie we were watching earlier this afternoon, the old-ass movie, It Came From Outer Space, the main character, John, funny enough, he witnesses the meteor crash, he sees the alien in the ship, and no one in town, and not even his girlfriend, believes him.
Yeah, but at the same time, a meteor just fucking hit the planet. Like, where is your line at? Like, shit just hit the fan, and your thing is like, yeah, but how much shit did it hit the fan?
You're seeing things, buddy.
That was one of my problems with... it was like my only problem with... 2020's Invisible Man, where
apparently that was really good though.
It's really good.
It's a real good movie.
But there's a sister character in that. Spoilers for Invisible Man.
We covered it on this show.
I know, but somebody may have not watched it. But the sister doesn't believe her, and she like gets an email from the Invisible Man. It's like says a bunch of horrible stuff about her.
Yeah, pretending to be the sister.
She like instantly shows up to the main character's house and is like, oh, you sent me this email. Oh, now I'm mad at you. And it's like, if somebody sent you this, if she sent you this email out of the blue, like if my sister sent me an email out of the blue that was just like really, really, like even if it was hateful to me, I'd be like, hey, is everything okay?
My first thought would be like, why are you sending,
what the fuck?
I'd be like, why are you sending an email? You have my number.
That's not so true.
Who sends emails anymore?
Or at least, like, call her and just be like, hey, what's up with this? And if they try to deny it, I'd be like, okay, but, like, I have this. Like, it's a conversation at least, not just I'm mad at you, we're never talking again.
And to go back to your point of, like, him being supportive, I also kind of just like the fact that, like, I don't know, just the atmosphere of, like, of being involved with somebody and like having that like relationship to be like, even if I don't fucking believe you, like I need to support you and I need to be there for you.
I'll help, and if it turns out to be nothing, then we'll
talk and we'll figure this out.
Yeah,
like,
we'll figure it out.
It should be a cooperation, and I respect the fuck out of
it. Give and take.
There's so many like older horror movies, especially that they're just like, you're crazy, and then the guy like leaves the relationship. And then like they have to repair it when he figures out it's okay, or he dies.
Or
like,
he
there's-
dies.
there's
Or he
two-
comes
back
immediately
to save the
afterwards,
day
yeah.
at the last second.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Then we're going back to the 80s,
So
because women can't be strong.
What you are all describing is can be boiled down to they need a way to isolate the main character, and they just would do something really cheap and terrible.
Yes.
And it got solved by people being better writers.
Yeah.
It feels like it just got solved by people writing better movies. And also, you don't need to isolate the main character. You can just have the bad guy take them both. Why not? Which is what happens here. Spoiler.
What? The whole movie's been
I know. We'll get there.
Continue.
But John is helping her go through the missing persons records because she's trying to find anything reported on of Sandy's murder. And this is when she starts seeing the ghosts, like, in the library attacking her.
And I think this is one of the first times you really see that it has to be when she's alone that she sees. Not necessarily when it has to be alone, but when she feels alone, maybe. I don't
When
know.
she feels isolated is when they start creeping
Because
in.
the second John walks away, that's when the event happens, and it's sort of like you see him walk away with lights fully blared, but they cut back to her, and all the lights are suddenly off. Like it's
They're flickering, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the ghosts start like creeping in on her, and then she's like running through the library avoiding these ghosts, and she has a pair of scissors from like her fashion kit, whatever. And she goes to stab one of the ghosts, and John grabs her hand the last second, stops her, and then she blinks back to reality. She almost just stabbed her roommate Jocasta in the eye.
So in this scene, one of the best parts about it is that as she's freaking out, she just hits a literal fuck it moment. She literally, I'm pretty sure, says fuck it. Like, because she's running around, she drops her bag, and she drops the scissors, and she picks up and goes and just has that like raging moment of like, I'm gonna fucking kill one of these motherfuckers. I'm tired of it. And that's when she turns and just swings. And like there's that moment of like, I swear to God, I was like, you should have done it. Like, even when I found out, I knew. Not for nothing. It was pretty obvious it was going to be her, I think, and maybe
It was at least going to be somebody.
It was gonna be
could have
somebody.
been
yes, I
librarian.
assumed it was going to be her because you can't make that character be a bad guy the entire time and not have some payoff. So that was what I assumed was going to be the payoff. I didn't expect John to catch her hand. I thought she might have just seen it, or I thought she was going to go all in. And
I really thought she might have killed her.
I would have been cool with all in, but that movie would not have finished at all if she went all in. She would have murdered somebody, and she would have went to jail.
Yep. But she didn't. John stopped her, and John tries to calm her down and say it's okay, and Jocasta says it's not fucking okay, and then she's like turns around and screams for security to come get her, and John's just like, hold on, stay here, I'm gonna go catch Jocasta and smooth this over, and that's when Ellie just like runs away on her own.
Like, hey, Jocasta, I know the attempted murder was crazy, but hear me out. I have some ideas.
Yeah, hear me out. But it doesn't, that's not exactly what happens. And at this point, I didn't know exactly how the movie was going to end. I had my own theories. My leading theory was that this was going to turn into a super, super dark movie and she was going to kill herself.
Right.
Because in the beginning of the movie, when her grandmother's talking to her about getting accepted into college, she alludes that like her mother also had this gift, but not as strong as her. And she says her mother killed herself due to some mental health issues when she was a child. My guess was that her mother went through something similar, and this is how it ended. Was she ended up killing herself. Especially because the grandmother also says, your mother went to London, it became too much for her, and she, couldn't take it. So I assume she came home. Maybe that's when her mother killed herself. We don't know that as the audience because it's not really spelled out, and I kind of like it more ambiguous that way. But like, I really thought
this movie does a good job at not explaining everything.
and I love it. I absolutely
you don't need
love it.
exposition every fucking
Yeah,
scene.
I mean, she just straight up at the beginning of the movie, they're like, and she can see ghosts, and then we keep going. There's
Yeah.
never any point where they go, and this is the reason you can see ghosts. It's
Yep.
just sort of like, yeah, you can just do it.
Yep. And so I was really wondering, like, is she gonna kill herself? Is that how we're gonna end this fucking terrible, this amazing movie, this terrible sequence of events in this amazing movie? Is it gonna end with her suicide? Because that feels awful, but like I could see it going that way.
So
But-
one thing I forgot that we didn't mention was during the reason why she was investigating the murder, the reason why she went to the police was because that she was 100% certain that the old man that was creeping on him
is Jack?
is Jack.
Yeah.
She was 100% convinced, and then I don't remember if it was before or after that he.
It's after she's about to confront Jack.
Okay, yes, that's what I was trying to figure out
Yep.
because it was the whole idea, and that the reason that she didn't have any information because she couldn't get his name or anything. That's where they go into
Right.
the research. But she was convinced that this old man was Jack, and that
Yeah,
she
she's the silver-haired man, the regular at the bar, is Jack, and she runs to the bar. She's got her phone recording to try to get him to confess to the murder, and he doesn't. He tells her that like Sandy wasn't this like moral high being that you've made her out to be and put her on this pedestal. There's a lot more to this story that you don't know, girl. And she's just like, you're Jack, you murdered her, admit it. And he's just like, I literally don't know what you're talking about. And he goes to walk away and gets hit by a fucking car.
Before that, he says, Sandy or Jack didn't kill Sandy. Alex kills Sandy.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
He says Jack didn't kill Sandy. Alex killed
Say
Sandy.
it. If you want to know who killed Sandy, or ask Alex. And that was where right before that he's done. He's like, I'm not listening to you anymore.
Yeah, you're clearly fucking crazy. Like, get out of here. And he goes to walk away and gets hit by a car. And he's literally dead in the street. Like, he's not moving, and his face is covered in blood. And the barmaid comes out, and she's just like crying, and she's like, "Oh my God, call the police. Let them know it's a former cop, and they'll hurry." And we have that moment of realization as the audience. We just got hit by a brick. Like, what? And Ellie turns to her, and she's like, "What?" And like, yeah, that's Lindsay, former Vice. He was a good cop back in the day, and he was a regular at the bar. He always chatted up the ladies, and he was such a good man. And
he used to watch over the girls.
He used to watch over the girls and keep them safe. And Ellie's just like, no, that he's not Jack. And he's like, no, his name's Lindsay.
Yeah, and this is where we come back to the scenes of when Anya Joy-Taylor's character Sandy was constantly talking to men who she would eventually have to sleep with. There's one character who said, "You don't have to do this. I can protect you," etc.
Yeah, he says like, "What's your name?" And she says Alex, and he's like, "No, your real name." And she's like, "Sandy." And he was like, "There we go." And like, there's a little moment between the two of them, and it's like, "Oh shit, that was him."
So
not
also,
Jack.
this is sort of a side thing, kind of, but has Sandy always been the name Alex?
Yeah, she kept using the name Alex as a cover name, but
she was experimenting with different names because and this kind of gets explained through actions, not words, especially in the full realization at the end. But like, Sandy was her name. Her full name was Alexandra. She went by Sandy because that was her name.
Right.
When she kept getting pimped out and doing all these things that she didn't want to do, she changed her name a bunch to like Alex or I think Alessandra.
It was different versions of Alex.
Different versions of that name.
But I was wondering,
she didn't use Sandy because that was her.
In the beginning, when Jack asked, "What's your name?" she said, "What's Sandy short for?" She says for Alexandria.
Yeah,
that's her full real name,
right? But is Sandy short for that already, or is it just I never knew that?
Yeah,
in the beginning, that's
I thought Sandy was just a name.
No, she says
Sandy is a name, but it's also short for Alexandra, or just whatever.
That's what I learned from this movie.
Sandy was the name that was dear to her. She wouldn't give it to the guys that she was getting pimped to because that was her name. And so they would get the fake names, even though they were deviations of her full name. So that was kind of it. Like, Sandy died when Alex was born, kind of a thing.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of what Lindsay was getting at in his little jab to Ellie. I don't know why he was so fucking vague about it, because now he's dead.
Yeah.
But, that's how it was.
Because even though he wasn't like a bad guy, he wasn't a good guy.
I don't think he was a great guy, but
he was still an old perv. Like, at the end of the day.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's at this point, Ellie is just fucking done. She's like, I'm getting out of London. We're done. So she goes to a phone booth, and she's calling her grandmother, like, please come get me. And the grandmother says, I can get you in the morning. Don't worry about it. And she's like, I can't wait till morning. It has to be now. And then she sees John, and she's like, wait, I'll get John. He'll help me get home. Because John's trying to find Ellie, because the last he saw of her, she ran away from the library after almost murdering somebody. John says, I've got a car. I'll drive you home to the countryside right away. So they go back to her apartment at Miss Collins' house, and she's like, if I'm not back in 15 minutes, come check on me. And she goes in the house, and she goes to Miss Collins crying, and she's like, I gotta leave. I'm so sorry to do this. I'm not usually that person. And Miss Collins is like, everything is fine. I'll put on a kettle. Let's just have some tea and do whatever. So she makes her a tea, and Ellie's crying and doing her thing, and she's like, just drink your tea. Everything's gonna be fine. And then
she was like, yeah, by the way, I heard you got the cops looking around here.
Yeah, she tells her that a nice detective came by asking about the murder of a woman named Sandy. And Miss Collins is like, it was a welfare check. But, I told them, but you're fine, everything's great, and they were on their way. And then she starts unraveling the thread about how she is Sandy.
Right.
Yeah,
and the murder that Ellie saw was the murder of Jack.
She, because she says, it's funny that you said that you think someone died up there, because someone did die up there. Sandy died up there. And then she's like, or no, she said, I died up there.
I died up there many times.
Exactly. And then and I really like that line, just that realm of like, I'm the one who died, like Sandy died, and that's where it comes
Sandy
down to.
died that day because I was no longer the person I believed to be. And then she reveals that she's the one, she killed Jack, and from there she just killed all the fucking men that ever used her.
It became a Sweeney Todd thing at that point.
It became a real Sweeney Todd thing. And like there was a scene of them getting like, I want to say like put just like under the floorboards, which how do you not smell that?
And that's the thing they mentioned. She says, just make sure you clog the drains during the summer because the smell rises during the heat, and that's when you realize that the bodies are hidden in the fucking thing. That's why she said,
that's what that is.
yeah.
Oh God,
So
that's such a great piece of information to hide in the movie that I didn't put together.
Once you see the floorboards closed, you realize that's why the smells happen so bad. It's because there's a bunch of dead bodies everywhere.
Holy shit. Okay. And then Ellie's like, I won't tell anyone, I swear. And Miss Collins kind of smiles and like, of course you won't. I know you won't. And then she looks down at her tea and you realize she just got fucking poisoned. Not terribly. She only had a few sips of the tea, and I'm sure it wasn't like the most potent poison ever. But she's
the rest of the movie leads on that she wasn't poisoned that bad.
It's not bad, but like bad enough to like inhibit her abilities as a human being.
She suddenly just vomits up.
Yep. And then of course John comes knocking at the door to check on her, and Miss Collins is fucking furious, grabs a knife, goes out there to fucking murder John. Ellie ends up kicking over Miss Collins' ashtray and knocking some cigarettes into her record box, which starts a very small fire that eventually becomes bigger. But John gets fucking just straight up stabbed right in the gut. And Ellie's screaming and fighting Miss Collins all the way up the stairs until she ends up getting up to her apartment and closing and locking the door. Collins is banging on it, and then all the faceless men ghosts are there in Ellie's room.
Well, they come out of the floorboards
and
the
they
walls
grab.
and
they
everything.
come out of the walls, out of the floorboards. I was disappointed a little bit. I expected one of them to be Jack, and none of them were.
No, because Jack his embodiment of Jack was constantly shown as like Jack. You always saw him constantly go, "Where do you think you're going, you little slut?" And that was like a constant line of his. So that's where he was. He was too much of a forefront, I guess, to be one of the victims, because he was not the victim. He was like the start of the victim.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
I guess more or less he was more important because that was what changed her. He wasn't just another faceless man. He
Stop
had a
with
face.
your points, man.
Well, that's another thing though. The ending could have gone so many ways. I was actually kind of worried watching this ending that it was gonna go in a way that I didn't like.
I'm reading the plot actually off Wikipedia, and I lied a little bit. One of them is Jack, but we meet him in a second. Anyway, the spirits of Sandy's victims beg Ellie to kill Ms. Collins, but Ellie won't do it.
Oh yeah. I remember.
She refuses, and then Ms. Collins finally gets through the door, and then Ms. Collins also sees all the ghosts, and the ghost of Jack slaps her. Yeah, and then the police are outside, and Ms. Collins like tells Ellie like. This is it. She's not going to prison, so she tries to slit her own throat, but Ellie stops her and saves her life. And Ms. Collins, she says, "I understand why you killed the men," and she like hugs Ms. Collins. Like it's so fucking weird.
They do a good job of like you suddenly are trying to sympathize these ghosts. Like that's what they do. Like basically they go.
They make you sympathize with the ghosts immediately. Like, oh, these are victims of Sandy's murderess.
For a brief moment before they realize like. But also,
these guys were monsters. They maybe deserved to die.
Exactly.
That's what I was about to say. Was it could have gone so many different ways where it could have lost me, and if she was just like, yeah, I'm totally teaming up with the weird sex ghosts, like that would have been a weird.
That would have been a weird ending.
I like the idea that they did though, where they sympathize and then you immediately turn on them again because you're like, okay, they were human beings, but
where you're like basically everybody in the story isn't perfect, but was a victim somewhere down the line.
Yeah, and then Ms. Collins talks to Ellie as her last moment, but it's Sandy's voice coming out, Anya Taylor-Joy, telling her to save herself and John save yourself and the boy, get out of here.
Eventually, it looks like her too.
A little bit, yeah. And then she just. It does actually look like her.
Yeah,
you're right.
Eventually,
it is Anya Taylor-Joy just straight up telling her to save herself and the boy, get out of here. And Ellie leaves the room and turns around, and you see Ms. Collins again as the old lady just sitting on the bed, like as the fire's just engulfing the building. Like she's done. This is it. This is the last act for her. And Ellie gets downstairs as the door gets kicked in by the fire department. She and John get taken out. They're getting treated for their wounds. And then it cuts to I assume the end of the semester. So it's like probably June. and Ellie's line of 60s inspired dresses are getting showcased at a fashion show, and she gets congratulated backstage by her grandmother and John, who is now her boyfriend. The fake friends of the roommate from before are there saying, "You're so brave, so brave."
Which is an bit they said in the beginning. It was like a good callback.
It's like a callback. And then Jacosta's there just rolling her eyes, doesn't say a fucking word. And she sees the ghost of her mother in the mirror, which she saw in the beginning when she got the acceptance letter. It's a sign of good things. And she's very, very happy about that. And then she turns and sees the ghost of Sandy in another mirror. And she goes, and Sandy like blows her a kiss. And then she walks over and like returns it and like taps the mirror. And that's fucking end of the movie. And I was like, holy fucking shit.
And now she's best friends with a murder ghost.
I literally like turned to John in the movie theater and I was like, this was the greatest fucking movie I've seen in like a decade. This was such a great movie.
Yeah,
oh
like,
my god.
Just totally, it wasn't like, I don't know, like it was smart and like unique and it was clever and something. Maybe again, I'm talking about nostalgia. You're in a saturated market where fucking Halloween and Scream and Child's Play are all getting a remake for the 15th time of the original actors coming back because everyone creams their pants when that shit happens. And it's like just that and Marvel movies and the same fucking 14 different things coming out all the time, and then this comes out of nowhere. And these movies exist. They're unfortunately in a smaller market in different countries that you're just not getting.
And they also kind of always have been. I mean, it's a little bit more commercialized nowadays, but like there's always sort of been like your forefront sort of franchise movies that go on, stuff like that. Westerns were a big part of it, where every single thing in the 70s is a Western.
Yeah.
But
and again, like there's always the background, like that you have like the music or the movie festivals. It's just like music too, but it's just, I think it's less embraced than music. But what it comes down to is like these movies to get a mainstream like existence like that. And I think that's one of the great things about Edgar Wright is that you have this mainstream director bringing a stylization of movies that you're just not seeing from other big name directors.
Yeah, that was a big reason why people were excited when Parasite won an Oscar. Parasite was a foreign film that it wasn't in any sort of franchise or anything like that, and it went up against like what else was nominated? There was like Joker, and there was like something else that was like a sort of a franchise.
I couldn't tell you.
Other white guy starring in a movie, probably Matt Damon or Ben. Well, I keep saying Matt
There
Damon.
There was Ford vs Ferrari, which is
oh
Matt
my
Damon.
god, that's fucking hilarious.
That is really funny. But this movie was so fucking incredible. And just to highlight a funny little bit for the end here. So apparently Edgar Wright wanted the 60s scenes to have no dialogue at all and just be music.
That could have been cool. But
Yes. However, one of his co-directors, a man named Wilson Cairns, suggested the character of Sandy has to have dialogue saying we need to fall in love with her, and that's hard to do when she doesn't say anything.
Especially, and that's the thing too, like that becomes sort of an issue of like, okay, so we're falling in love with the image of Sandy, which then
that's also true.
But then that actually kind of works because it's like, okay, but you don't really know her, you only know the image of Sandy, and like you're falsified into what you believe in. There's a lot of ways you can do the no sound thing. I am a sucker for the no sound thing. The greatest version of that being the Quiet Plays, not using sound being directorial genius. But like, I think in this one, yes, you want to have that. You want to flesh out the character more than just an image. Right.
And then another funny bit, Edgar Wright loving music so much. So the song that plays in the very first 1960s scene is a song called Wade in the Water. And when he first heard it, he imagined that dance scene in his head like almost perfectly. And that was absolutely a scene that he needed in that movie just to make it happen. Like that whole first dance scene was something that he had envisioned like years and years ago and wanted to put in a movie, and now he has it.
And that's the thing about, like you were saying with the Baby Driver.
With Baby Driver, the heist, the bell bottoms.
And that's what makes these movies, because they're coming from his brain, not from like, oh, I read this book and I really like this book, I want to make this book a movie. It's like, I really like this idea and I want to build from there. And it's, again, and I was saying even earlier, like there's so many horror movies suck, but there's so many unique ideas in the horror franchise because you can do more with it, I think.
Yep. And then there's a 1980s song, Happy House by Susie and the Banshees. He says when he heard that song, he imagined a scene in a movie where they're at a student union Halloween dance. Guess what song plays at the Halloween dance in the student union? It's Happy House by Susie and the Banshees.
Fantastic.
And it's just absolutely incredible how he can hear these songs and just envision these dramatic, very captivating scenes and then be able to transcript them perfectly into a film. Or I imagine perfectly. I don't know how Edgar Wright feels about them. I imagine he's happy with them because he's done working on them. But I imagine nothing's ever quite as perfect as it is in his dreams. That might be one of the reasons I love him so much. His ability to hear a song and just imagine an entire scene to it, and then he's got the power and money to make it happen on the screen is just absolutely incredible to me.
And even when he uses other people's IPs, like Scott Pilgrim, like
absolutely,
he made that movie such a unique style. And the music in that, obviously, even Sex Bomb, like creating Sex Bomb into a band that I actually want to fucking listen to is fucking amazing.
The Black Sheep song played by Clash of Demon Head.
Yeah, well, he didn't create that song. Metric created that song. Metric wrote that song. It's a cover of a Metric song.
Edgar Wright and Metric wrote that song.
Okay.
He wrote it with them.
With Metric?
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Because Brie Larson sings that.
Brie Larson sings it. He wrote it with the band, and the band performed it, and then Brie Larson
covers
sang over it
No
for
shit.
the movie.
I didn't know
that.
He wrote it with the band.
Okay.
I
didn't
have
know
no
that.
input on this.
You never haven't seen Scott Pilgrim. You
because
would really
Metric's
enjoy
I've
it.
seen Scott Pilgrim.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay.
It's,
Are you not a Metric fan? Is that it? You fucking hate Metric?
No, I
He's more of a U.S. kind of guy. Feet
I
glitches.
don't know what any of this means. My
Metric
knowledge
really
on
nothing.
music is not great.
Non-existent, pretty
But
much.
point is though, like the atmosphere, the music, and the fact that like you're taking a comic book and making it more like a fucking comic book than most of these comic book movies. Like it was good. It was like it just the use of the coins and the sound effects, the lighting,
Taking
all
a
that.
graphic novel like Scott Pilgrim that has so many comic book references and bits to it, and turning that into a film without losing that style is a very hard thing to do. But he pulled it off.
There's a reason it's kind of like a cult classic now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's still
There's a
gets
reason.
fucking.
There's a reason why they re-released it for its 10th anniversary, like in theaters. And I saw that shit. In
And
theaters.
it didn't really make that much money originally.
No, it did. I think better than the second release.
Speaking of, that's another fun fact I wanted to highlight with this. So, I don't know. A lot of films are doing very poorly in the box office right now,
Right.
Because there's still a lot of COVID scares, even though theaters are back open. When we went and saw Last Night in Soho, we saw it the day it came out, and we were one of like, I don't know, what was that, a dozen, maybe 2 dozen people in the whole theater?
Maybe like 20.
And we saw it in like the huge IMAX theater at the AMC near us. This movie, as of right now, on a $43 million budget, has only made about $7 million back.
Right.
Like, this movie is, by any other metric, this would be a bomb. But like, it's so hard because everything this year is getting graded on a scale. At least I hope so, because Edgar Wright doesn't make shitty movies, and this movie is not doing great.
Well, I think that it's also a thing of franchises are eating things up even more right now.
Oh,
where,
for sure.
like, Venom made some money, Dune made money. I think.
Would you call Dune a franchise?
No, it's trying to be.
No, yeah, it's going to be now, but it's still a previously known IP remake,
Right.
Okay.
It's like based off of something.
It's not doing. It's an original IP, so it's not doing as well.
Yeah, is
Is that the point you were trying to make? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm stepping on your toes.
because I know that people are saying that Last Duel is also bombing, and there's something else that's in theaters right now that's bombing. But like anything that's not like Venom 2 is beating this movie. And you're like, what?
Yeah, seriously.
Like,
and I like Venom too.
Yeah, I thought it was fine.
Another thing that I really don't know if this hurts or helps the movie. It helps it in my opinion. But like a lot of trailers nowadays, I try to avoid them for the most part if it's a movie I'm interested in, because a lot of trailers give away a lot of plot points. Like the best example I've ever had is the Phantom Menace trailer, where they show off Darth Maul and the double-bladed lightsaber. And in the movie, that's such a huge reveal that you see the trailer and you're like, why would you ever put that in a trailer?
Yeah.
And to this film's credit, Last Night in Soho, you don't know a fucking thing about this movie going into it. I've seen the trailer a couple times. I didn't know a single goddamn thing about the plot of this movie, other than that the 60s were in it, and modern day was in it, and Anya Taylor-Joy was in it. I knew nothing else.
They have a second trailer that alludes to a little bit more happening. Like characters actually talk in it, and like they show a scene where Matt Smith's face morphs into the old guy's face.
Ooh.
And I watched that with our friend Caitlin, and she was just like, "Oh man, I feel like I saw too much now." And I sent her a message after I saw the movie. I was like, "You haven't seen too much. You're fine.
You have no idea what you're into."
This-
And then there's other movies like The Last Duel, where the entire plot is literally in the trailer.
Right.
All that you're missing is like the details and then like the end.
Right.
Which, I mean, it was a real thing that happened. You can Google the end.
Yeah. I think that's kind of one of the reasons they do stuff like that in those movies.
It's
But,
like, yeah, you know this already happened, so you don't really need to miss out. You're not missing out on much. But I think with the Last Night at Soho, they do, and this actually goes to like the Cabin in the Woods favor. When you market a movie as one thing, but you release it as something else, that's a big hit or miss. They market this as a sort of thriller crime movie, I think, with like a medium concept. That's how I've seen it marketed, and then become such a horror movie.
Apparently, I was misspoken earlier, by the way, or just I was completely wrong. I'm going to say Edgar Wright has said from the beginning this was going to be a London set psychological horror film.
Okay.
It's just a matter of me misunderstanding, I guess. I didn't get any horror vibes from any of the marketing. I saw it as a little bit of a crime drama and mostly just like a period piece, and that's what I was in for. I did not expect any of the horror going into it, so when it happened, I was rightly spooked out.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, because it really what I remember from marketing and trailers was that you have this woman who saw a murder from the past and wants to solve this murder from the past in the 60s. They kind of make it seem like she lives that life, but I didn't get elements of like fucking hands coming out of the goddamn walls and like grabbing her.
Yeah,
and, like,
what
keeping
the fuck?
And someone
man.
almost getting stabbed in the face with scissors. Like, this is not.
Want to hear the best thing about me seeing this movie in theaters altogether? This movie specifically, I had a free ticket.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Good for you.
I tried to go to one of the Fathom events for it was for Spirited Away recently,
Oh yeah.
and the projector never turned on,
Oh,
so nobody
no.
got
I
to
was
see
gonna
it.
go to that. I'm glad I didn't go.
Yeah, I went to go see. It was going to be the first movie I saw in my relationship with my girlfriend.
Oh,
And then the
no.
projector didn't
That
play.
was your first date. That's funny.
It wasn't my first date, but it was the
Well,
first movie
yeah.
we saw. But I ended up getting 2 free tickets. We tried to use it for Howl's Moving Castle later. We couldn't use it for another Fathom event, so I just used it for this later. So
Oh,
it was,
that's kind of shitty, but that's AMC. That's
yeah,
not
it's
really...
weird. but I ended up seeing this movie kinda for free. It was more of a discount because the Fathom events are less than the normal ones.
Oh, well, whatever.
But this is a good movie to see for free.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is such a good fucking movie. Jesus Christ. Oh,
Like if I saw like Venom 2 for free, I'd be like, okay, I'm glad I saw it for free.
All right. Out of how many fishes would you give this?
Fish?
on a scale of 1 to 73, I'd say this is about a 69.
Well, here's my whole thing: is that there are you're saying fish specifically, and there are, as we know, there are many fish in the sea.
Did you really just restate that point so you
so-
can make that dumb joke?
So I'm going to say that this is the whole mackerel.
Oh, that's good. That's
Yeah.
good. I like you.
I
think up there it's probably and I would even go as far as to say it's like a crustacean.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
That's not a fish though.
No, that's the point. The shit was just beyond the sea.
Oh, okay. I see what you're
under
saying.
the sea. Under the sea. No.
Then
You
we
see
fade
him-
out the black, and that's how this fucking podcast ends. Fade the black like there's a fucking camera here.
Yeah, I don't. Anyway,
Do you guys not do a rating system for that? I never realized that.
we don't really do a rating system.
Well, actually, it's funny you bring that up. My first idea was to do a rating system like you just did,
Which is
where it's
ridiculous.
all nonsense,
Yes.
and the first few episodes are like that, and then Jeff made me stop.
Oh, it's good. It's a good bit.
All right, fine.
I didn't even talk to him about this, and it's a good bit. Clearly, we got 2 out of 3 here.
I'm sold. You can do the bit.
It's a
That's
good bit.
fine. I will say I'm on the official website of the movie, and there's a lot of typos and bad things on this website. Somebody really needs to fix this shit up. For producer, it just says $producer, and then under that it says $producer _ names.
Well, they're
like,
done. The movie's out. They don't need
Somebody
to fucking sell anyone
clearly
else.
didn't even edit this website properly. Our website is put together better than this, and I did it in my spare time 2 years ago.
And how many episodes does that have on it?
2, 3, something. Because I was putting them on the website and on Libsyn for a while, or the podcast feeds. But then hosting data on a website costs money, so I couldn't do that for very long.
Yeah,
So
so
that's
that
why it's only
you
3
heard it here
episodes.
first, folks. Send us money.
I
Just
mean,
in
I'm not
the
going to turn
mail.
it down.
Guys, they have a Patreon. It's on OnlyFans.com.
Yeah.
How can it be a Patreon on OnlyFans?
Well, it's hyperlinked with Fansly, so
we should end this podcast.
Yes, we should end this podcast. I'd like to thank Troy for being here today.
I'd like to thank John.
Oh, are we giving out stars? Mine goes to the Star Spangled Banner.
And I'm Jeff Ackerman.
America.
Thank you all for being here. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a nice review on your favorite podcasting platform. And make sure to give us the whole mackerel of fish in your review settings. I know what I said. And
just say
max
it's
them
good.
out.
Just say the
Just
podcast
say it's good.
is
Just say it's good. Tell your friends about us. Tell your friends that like TV and movies. And even if your friends don't like TV and movies, if it's
Just
an enemy
what
and they
you
hate
want-
things,
What
tell
you want to
them.
do, you want to chase your friends down the street yelling about us.
Grab like an old Zune from 2008 and run down the street in a bathroom. Just be like, listen to this podcast.
Yeah. Just make everybody uncomfortable.
Absolutely, because that's our brand.
That's our brand.
Uncomfortability.
And if you like uncomfortability and cocktails, go check out Jager's mom. Words?
Jager's mom?
Jager's mom. Jager Bombs with Johnny's mom. The
Jager
other
Bombs.
podcast that I'm from, Jager Bombs.
Jager Bombs with Johnny's mom.
And even though I'm taking a very mental health break and I've only released one episode of season 2, it's worth it.
And if you really don't like me, I'm not on it.
Yeah, this is the problem of this episode was Troy. Then fucking
If you listen to this whole thing and you're like, God, it's okay, but it's just that Troy guy, listen to Jager Bombs.
yeah, he's not there.
true story. Next episode I record, you're gonna be in it.
Next
I don't
episode you
drink.
record. You don't drink at all. That'd be really awkward.
It
That'd
would
be
be.
awesome.
I'd just sit there,
Yeah.
like right now.
Am I allowed to talk during this?
No.
If you want, I guess.
You
It's the
can't,
outro.
no.
Do you want to? Do you?
Does it make mine sound better if I talk? Oh, can I sing Jager Bombs? Johnny's mom.
Thank you all for listening. If you made it this far, bye.